You're listening to Soap Dirt, the latest in television entertainment news.
Hey, Days of Our Lives fans. So Theo Carver hit the ground running ever since his return to Salem, but his mental health seems to be suffering, and he had a bit of a PTSD incident during the blackout when he had an encounter with JJ Devereaux that was very unpleasant. And I have to wonder, is Tony DiMera somehow behind all of this? It's Belinda from Soap Dirt. Please hit that subscribe. Let's dive into whether there is an agenda against JJ that's been cooked up by Tony, or maybe that's not really Tony. That remains to be seen based on his recent actions, because that might actually be Andre. We're going to talk about that as well. So we've seen Theo's PTSD and his job offer from Tony taking center stage since he came back. We already saw that Theo went to Police Commissioner Jada Hunter to tell her he's absolutely shocked that she would rehire JJ after he quit the force 8 years ago. If you remember, Theo had a long road to recovery and had to learn to walk again after JJ shot him. That's why he quit being a cop. So there's just something rather strange about the timing of Theo's attempts to get his former friend fired from the SPD. The odd thing is that JJ and Theo got close after the shooting when they were both living in South Africa. They even ran a business together. And now it's been like this 180. And Theo is livid that JJ didn't consult him before he rejoined the Salem Police Department. But, you know, we also know that Tony asked Theo to come back to Salem and then offered him this great job straight away. We don't know all the details about it or if it's dodgy in some way. So it just has me wondering if Tony is somehow behind Theo pushing to get JJ fired from the police department. In case you forgot, here's a quick catch up on what went down that terrible night in Salem that started all this. So back then, JJ Devereaux was a rookie cop, and he shot and almost killed Theo Carver. So here's how it happened. The backstory, just real quick. Back in 2017, Kate Roberts had convinced Theo, who of course is a computer whiz kid, to help her dig in and find out who had been hacking into the DiMera Enterprises computer system. And Theo really wasn't thrilled to do it, but Kate finally convinced him to look into it. So Theo was hunting down this suspected hacker, and he tried to break into a building as part of the scheme, but he accidentally set off an alarm. And in case you forgot, Theo's on the spectrum, and the alarm freaked him out, and then he went running away. And that was the point when newbie cop JJ saw some guy in a hoodie running from what he assumed was the scene of a crime. And as a rookie, JJ got trigger happy, and he shot first and didn't ask questions, you know? So JJ shot Theo, and then, of course, JJ was absolutely shaken to the core when he saw it was Theo that he had shot. Back then, JJ felt like he couldn't trust himself, and then he just abruptly quit the police force, walked away from the SPD, and after he was shot, Theo was stuck in a coma for, I think it was about a month. And then when he woke up, he was paralyzed. So this was a real tragedy. And back then, Days of Our Lives wrote Theo out for a while, and he left to go to a specialized rehab center in South Africa so that he could relearn to walk. And eventually, Theo forgave JJ for the shooting, and they became roommates and best buddies during their time in South Africa. So back then, Days didn't delve deeply into racial bias or profiling with this shooting. And right now, there are some fans that don't like the direction they feel that this storyline is taking. However, there could be more to this than meets the eye, and what fans assume is happening may not really be the focus of the storyline. You know, Days does a pretty good job covering social justice topics and rip from the headline kinds of things, except the problem is there's that big 9-month, tape to air delay that kind of throws things off kilter sometimes, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the reason why this story is being revisited. It could be less about rip from the headline stuff and more about just DiMera dirty business. So if you listen here regularly, you might have heard us talking about our theory that Tony isn't himself. And that's really his evil doppelganger, Andre. And yes, I know Abigail Devereaux supposedly killed Andre a few years back, but with Dr. Rolfe routinely resurrecting people, death is rarely a final outcome in Salem. And Rolfe specializes in resurrecting DiMeras in particular. So it's totally plausible that Andre is not dead at all, and he's pretending to be Tony DiMera, something that he has pulled off quite convincingly in the past. Plus, Andre would be the type that would encourage his nephew and egg Theo on about the fact that JJ, who shot him, is wearing a badge and carrying a gun once again. So I just want to be clear, I'm not making light of the fact that Theo suffers from PTSD because of the shooting or saying that racial profiling doesn't happen, because we all know it does. So we all saw how Theo reacted recently when JJ stopped him for curfew violation during Salem's blackout. I thought it was kind of insane that JJ was talking about stopping looting in the square during the blackout, but there was nothing amiss. Like, they didn't even show a broken window or any signs of looting. And Salem doesn't seem like a town that's prone to that kind of thing. It's a small town. It's not a big city. So despite the B-roll shots that would tell you it's a large town, since everybody walks from door to door and store to store, we know it's a small town. So it's also pretty interesting that Tony brought Theo back to town with this tantalizing job offer. And even before the incident during the blackout where JJ triggered Theo's PTSD, we already saw him trying to get JJ fired. That's why he went to Jada. So this may all be just a coincidence of incidences, or maybe it is a storyline that hasn't totally unfolded yet. So if Tony is indeed Andre, I wouldn't put it past him to want JJ fired for a very specific reason. Andre may be planning to have Theo doing dirty work for the DiMeras, borderline illegal stuff, and doesn't want to risk JJ catching Theo doing some shady DiMera deeds because, as former friends, JJ might take special notice of what Theo was doing. So we'll see what happens and whether this Theo versus JJ thing and the callback to Theo's shooting story is a social storyline or a dirty DiMera deal that's going to turn very dark soon. So stay tuned.
Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you don't want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.